I've already started Vlogmas and I didn't realise. It's June. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie. I read a lot of books. I also go to the theatre sometimes, which is what brings today's video. Book of Mormon. I saw the Book of Mormon in April. We saw a matinee. I believe it was the 20th of April. I think it was the Wednesday that me, my mum and my dad went to see it at Leeds Grand Theatre. And I have been listening to the soundtrack for years, as have most people, and always thought it was hilarious. I figured my parents would like it because they enjoyed Avenue Q, and they did love it. They did love it. We were laughing so hard. It was so good and so funny. And at the end of the show, there were real Mormons hanging outside the theatre with flyers saying, right, you've seen the show, here's the real story. Yes, so let's tell you the cast list. Robert Colvin as Elder Price, Connor Pearson as Elder Cunningham, Aviva Tully as Nabalungi, Jordan Lee Davis as Elder McKinley and Moroni, Ewan Cummins as Father Hatimbi, and then you've also got Jonathan Tweedy, Thomas Bernal, Jed Berry, Lauren Anderson, David Brewis Scott, Sanchia Amber Clark, Tom Dickerson, Patrick George, Trey Copeland Williams, Chanel Edwards Frederick, Tad Hapaguti, Daniel Haswell, Evan James, Darren John, Michael Lewis. It's a massive ensemble. George Little, Fergal McGough, Sasha Monique, Nicole Louise, Ben Middleton, Daniel Nageson Lopez, David Perkins, Chomba S. Towlo, Jacob Yarlett, Sharon Wattis, and Rory Shafford. They actually have a full thing going from the month that Joseph Smith was born up to the opening of the Book of Mormon show in February 2013. This is the middle of the programme. Yeah. So good, so funny. Book music and lyrics by Trey Parker, Robert Lopez and Matt Stowe, directed by Casey Nichol and Trey Parker. So if you don't know the Book of Mormon, but you think that those names sound familiar, it's because this musical is from the creators of South Park. Now, I watched South Park when I was a kid when I wasn't supposed to, and I loved it. As I've gotten older, I'm not the biggest fan of South Park anymore. But yeah, as you get older, your tastes change. This was a show I was supposed to see in 2020, but was pushed back because of the pandemic. It did get moved to 2021, and I believe there were social distance performances in 2021, but this year in 2022 was the tickets I decided to opt for. And yeah, the soundtrack is so good, it's so funny, it's so on the nose. But I think it's one of those ones where, in kind of similar vein to Avenue Q, it's got its offensive parts, but it doesn't single anybody out. So it's offensive to everybody. So by being inclusive like that, you can't really be offended by it. Well, you can, but yeah, it's just so good and so funny, and proper shout out to Connor Pearson as Elder Cunningham. He was everything I wanted in Cunningham and more. His moment in Man Up is one of my favourite songs on the soundtrack anyway. You got to man up. That moment where Cunningham gets his moment and he says he's going to man up and he's going to take over now that Price is going. Yeah, that whole bit was just so good, and everyone was just like, yes, go Cunningham, go! It's one of those ones where Elder Price isn't particularly likeable. From the beginning, he's there just going, I just want to go to Orlando, Florida, which is where I'm supposed to be on my way to right now, but there's a storm, so we've had to rearrange flights. But yes, you're watching this after my holiday, but at this point I have not left yet. We were supposed to be travelling down to London today for flights tomorrow, but the storm is happening, there's a storm going in to Florida, and so our flights were cancelled, so we spent the morning rearranging things. But yes, so we are now going on Saturday to London for flights on Sunday. With this, we still get pretty much bang on 2 weeks in Florida, and I can't wait. But yeah, Elder Price is obsessed with the idea of going to Florida and doing his mission in Florida. And he wants to go to Disney, so I understand the love for Disney, but it's just like, through the show, you feel like Price isn't particularly a fan of his own religion. And to be honest, even though it's the Book of Mormon, when you get to the end of the show, you realise this is not about the Book of Mormon. This is not really about the Mormon Church, even though it is pretty accurate into the origins of the church. I'm not going to say that it's like 100% right, but it's pretty close to the origins of the actual church. You think that Elder Price is the main character, but you're wrong. Cunningham is. Cunningham is really the main character, because you think of it as being like Price, like the straight person, and then Cunningham kind of the supporting character, but really I feel that Price is the supporting and Cunningham is the main character, because by the end of the show they create the Church of Arnold, because of the lies that Cunningham said when they were on their mission in Africa, and the fact that he creates a new origin story. When Cunningham and Price are put together for the mission and they're told they're going to Africa, first you've got Price, who's not happy at all because he wanted to go to Disney, but then when they get there they realise that realistically, the church can do nothing for them. The place where they are sent is a poor area, and they've got bigger things to focus on than religion. So in trying to convert them and bring missionaries to the church, Cunningham realises that telling them the true story isn't going to help them in the slightest. So he uses some of the church's teachings, the real church's teachings, but then adapts it to what those in Africa want to hear, basically. So he says, you know, because there's a point where it's just like, because it talks about like female genital mutilation. I told you, this is it's quite dark, really, especially when you look at the Africa side of things, because it's talking about like raping babies and things. This probably sounds ridiculous if you don't know the story, and it's really, describing this musical is so ridiculous. There's basically Price and Cunningham, as members of the church and missionaries, are sent off to, basically they're like paired off within the religion, the young'uns, to go and get more Mormons. That's basically the main way to describe it, and they are sent off on missions to convert people to the church. Obviously, where Price and Cunningham end up is not somewhere where you would expect people to be Mormon or convert to Mormonism. I don't know if that's the right word. But as I said, where they are in Africa just does not need that. They have got their own things to worry about without this group of Mormons coming in every so often and saying, "Do you want to hear about the Book of Jesus Christ?" And they're just like, "No, piss off." But it's through that Cunningham has a great song anyway, where it's the whole thing of like, "You're making things up again, aren't you?" Because Cunningham has a habit for lying. And so that's the basis of Cunningham, really, the fact that he's a liar, a twister, and that is how he ultimately gets the Africans to convert to Mormonism. Who lies? He lies and makes stuff up, and through that creates his own teachings and ultimately his own church, because it's not based in Mormonism. Again, I don't know if Mormonism is a word, it seems like the apt word to use. It is so ridiculous, so offensive. There's a lot of language in the show. It is not suitable for young children in the slightst. Think of the worst swear word. I'm not going to say it. I have sworn on this channel, but I won't say that one. I'll tell you, it begins with a C. Some might say, "See you next Tuesday," if you will. The fact that I took my parents to see this show, in a way I still question my motives there. But at the same time, my parents have heard music from this soundtrack before and they have laughed their heads off. And in the song where they say F you God, both my mum and dad were howling. And my dad is a very soft-spoken man. My dad doesn't swear very often. As a kid, I never thought that my dad swore. As I've gotten older, I can have conversations with my dad, and it's quite funny to see him pissed off, to be honest, because you just don't expect it from my dad. He's so gentle. But yeah, just seeing them howling with laughter at like the song where they're saying F you God, when they're using the C word, to see my parents laughing that much over something like this is hilarious, ridiculous, just all the feels. For the fact that I actually took my parents to see the show. But it's just so funny. And yeah, for me, the standout was Cunningham. Connor Pearson as Cunningham is just genius. He was so good. And Robert Colvin as Elder Price. Even though Price isn't the most likeable of characters, I mean, throughout the show, you see him being quite selfish. And, you know, the fact, obviously I've said, you know, he wants to go to Disney World. He doesn't really want to do a mission. He just wants to go to Disney. And when he has his moment when he's just like, I'm just going to leave now, and I'm just going to go to Disney World. And then he has his Spooky Mormon Hell Dream, which, again, oh, that was such a great moment in the show. Because when I listen to Spooky Mormon Hell Dream, I'd have to sing, I have to do all the voices. But yeah, Robert Colvin as Price was perfection. Connor Pearson as Cunningham was perfection. And just everybody was amazing. And Aviva Tully singing Salt Lake City, Salt Lake City. I mean, that has been one of my favourite songs from the show. I think it's because of the fact that it's a gorgeous song anyway. It's beautiful. And just, I love the whole thing of the Salt Lake City, when you realise she's saying Salt Lake City. Yeah, Aviva Tully's voice was just stunning. Jordan Lee Davis as McKinley and Moroni, again, because he essentially opened the show. Oh, I just loved it. I just loved it. It was brilliant. I feel like I haven't given too much away. I say too much away. I basically told you that Price wants to just go to Disney and Cunningham creates his own church. But there was a lot of stuff that happens in the middle, and the songs are just so good and so catchy. But yeah, if you haven't heard it, I think it's one of those things that just like, I don't know if you should listen to the songs before you see it. I think for some people they may need to listen to it before they see it, just because the songs really give you an idea. Because it doesn't, I'll tell you, the soundtrack doesn't give away the story, because I think with a lot of shows you can listen to it, but until you see the show you don't really understand everything that's happening. And there were certainly parts of the show that I didn't realise what was happening at that point with the context of the songs. You do need the context to understand it all, but because of the language used, it is just one of those ones that I think maybe you do need exposure to at least a couple of the songs to know what you're getting yourself into if you don't have experience of the writing team before. If you've seen South Park, you have a general idea of what you are getting into. If you haven't seen South Park, you may want to watch a little bit of South Park, maybe listen to one or two songs to figure out if it's for you. Me, I have quite a dark sense of humour. I'm not that fussed about language. Swear words can be used for good. There has actually been science into how language can be pain relief. Like, if you stub your toe and scream the F word, technically it helps a little bit. There are certain words I won't say. It doesn't mean that I'm offended by them. To be fair, I think it mainly depends on the context used. If somebody called me the C word, I'd probably be like, yeah. If you're not a big sweary person and you get offended easily, this isn't the show for you, basically. This is a show for people who basically don't give a shit. That's the best way to describe it, probably. Yeah, if you don't give anything, then you can walk in knowing exactly what this is. which is a show which takes the mickey a bit out of the Mormon Church. Apparently the Mormon Church weren't actually that offended by it because of how correct the show is about the origins of the church. And to be honest, if you go into any religion, the origins of most religions are a bit weird anyway. I mean, you can just look at Christianity. I mean, I was brought up Christian. You've got a guy who told everybody to love each other, and then you've got a guy who got really offended by that and decided to kill him, and then Jesus came back to life 3 days later. If you don't listen to that story and think, maybe that was a bit weird, then yeah. But yeah, Book of Mormon. There is a bit of cheese in there. It can be cheesy. The soundtrack is a bop. I don't think there's any songs in this show that I actually skip. I think they're all tunes. And I learned something from this show because I didn't really know anything about the Mormon Church before that anyway. So you can see it as a bit of a learning experience. I think probably mid to late teenagers will probably be okay with this. I would not take a 12-year-old to see this show because there's very hardcore swearing in here. I say hardcore swearing. It's just like, it's not just like bloody hell. It's the F word, it's the C word, and there's some adult themes in there. I will say though, in all of this, Cunningham was my favourite. I loved the love story, and the Baptize Me song was so funny. I mean, it's already funny when you just listen to it, but when you have the visual of him going, I'm gonna baptize her, it's just so funny. It's just so good. If it comes on tour again, or you want to go see it in London, and you don't know what you're getting yourself into, have a little listen to the soundtrack, and watch South Park. That will get you in the headspace of what to expect from this musical. But it is just so good, and it's so funny, and this programme is to go with my collection under my bed when I have my own place. I'm pretty sure I want to frame a few of my favourite programmes, so this might end up on a wall in my own place at some point. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. I will see you tomorrow with another Vlogmas video. Mwah. Stay safe. I am off to play with my niece because she's staying over for a pre-holiday now, since we were supposed to be going down today and it's not happening because of the storm. So at least this way we just miss all the bad weather. It's supposed to be sunny this weekend in Florida, so hopefully that stays like that.